I'm Sarah Fuller. I am an assistant professor of English at a community college. I was diagnosed with ADHD 5 years ago when I was 33.
When we think of ADHD, I think a lot of people think of teenage boys who can't sit still and are hyper. What has been your experience with ADHD?
Yeah, that's what I always associated it with. I think there's that emphasis on hyperactive. For me, it wasn't until I started reading more about it and seeing more stuff being published about how it affects girls and women that I started to see it in myself.
You know, for a long time, I sort of suffered in silence. And this series is trying to shine a light on these topics.
There is no stigma to me. It's mine.
The prevalence of diagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, in boys is roughly twice as high as its prevalence in girls. Studies comparing ADHD in gender found that girls tend to have trouble focusing on tasks involving mental effort, like homework, while boys display more physical symptoms, like running about and fidgeting.
Most girls aren't physically running around the classroom, turning flips, like things that get you noticed by the teacher. You might get on your report card, you talk too much, but if you're still, keeping up with your assignments, things like that, being messy, being disorganized, those are things you might get comments on, but it's not something that your teacher or your parents might necessarily be so frustrated about that they want to go get help. Kind of started suspecting or figured out that I had ADHD in medical school. And at that time, because of stigma, I didn't seek out diagnosis because I figured that people would think I was just trying to get on stimulants to get through medical school easier.
As more women like Sarah Fuller are diagnosed with ADHD in adulthood, that gap between its prevalence across gender closes.
You didn't get diagnosed, let me put this out there, until you were 33, is that correct?
Correct. ADHD at 33. I like how it rhymes.
So your story rings probably really true to a lot of people.
I believe that. I mean, and that makes sense to me.
I found out that I have ADHD because I had a separate medical condition. I had an ovarian torsion, and the change in my hormones when that happened to me was so profound that it really made my previously sort of livable under the radar ADHD much, much worse. And that is how I got diagnosed.
I started to lose my words in therapy. Being a therapist, I talk all day. And I had read one time where ADHD could be a part of, losing your words, especially during menopause. So I sought out someone to be able to diagnose me.
When I got older and I saw lists where trouble staying organized, messy desks, messy rooms, I'm like, yep. Outbursts of anger was something that was listed for girls and boys with ADHD. I'm like, okay, that was definitely me.
Let's go back for a second. When you were a kid, did anybody have any reason to diagnose you with any sort of mental health issue, disorder?
So I think I just finally found what I was technically diagnosed with as a child as being oppositional defiant disorder. And especially now, I believe that it was a misdiagnosis and that the symptoms that they were seeing were actually a result of my ADHD. I'll be honest, I was a royal terror at home. They didn't know what to do. My parents very much, were aware that it wasn't okay, what was going on. And so I did go and see therapists and shrinks, and I did not like that.
How did that manifest through, college or your young adulthood?
I never really embraced any diagnosis all the way through, college or anything. And I struggled in college. I struggled in high school academically. Right now, I'm an English professor. I got kicked out of AP English in high school.
How do you explain that?
I didn't use a planner. I didn't understand. My test scores in English and reading and writing were always sky high, 98th, 99th percentile. But then when it came to actually doing the work, I had a hard time keeping up, right? And keeping myself motivated and organized.
This would become a pattern for you.
Absolutely. I was the student who the top of their desk didn't close all the way because it was piled. The locker didn't close. I had a roommate in college who asked me to move out because my half of the dorm room was a pigsty. I mean, I can admit that.
Was it a matter of you just couldn't get a kickstart to clean?
It was the kickstart. And that's where I really felt just kind of I felt like I knew something just like was different about me. Like, this seems easier for other people. But I still didn't necessarily associate that with like ADHD.
Where's the attention deficit and the hyperactivity disorder?
A lot of people in the ADHD community kind of take issue with that a little bit because oftentimes we have too much attention. So it's about getting your attention on the right thing at the right time. Sometimes I'm super focused. Other times it's really hard to stay in that zone. So one of the ways that my ADHD shows up in my house is that I have ideas for house projects that I want to do, and I will get the energy and the impulse to start them, like picking out paint, but then I will get stuck at that step and I won't finish it. And so this has been like this for a couple of years now.
And how do you manage that? What helps you get through that?
Meds help, but also like I feel like each semester, each year, I tweak things to try to figure it out. One of the things for me as a teacher with ADHD is making sure that I'm managing my class time and my students' time really well and keeping on top of it. On different slides, I will have different timers so that I can kind of keep pace.
For Sarah, knowing she has ADHD and setting up systems to help her keep organized has been a life changer.
So one of the strategies I've been utilizing for organizing is clear storage and combining like things. Face things, extras, hair, and of course my nail polish collection, which has been a hyper focus of mine during the pandemic. And I decided to get like a little extra and number them, and so they're in order, and I can figure out what colors I have, which is also going to help me not buy repeat colors, which has happened in the past.
And with her YouTube channel, The ADHD Academic, Sarah has set out to share the systems and teaching aids she uses to not only keep herself on track, but to share her journey with others.
For me, the biggest positive of ADHD is that it makes me good at my job. I am constantly coming up with new and creative ideas for my classes. I don't let anything get stagnant. Sometimes people don't realize that you can have something like ADHD and still be successful in that academic realm.
I think we're seeing so much more of the mental health discussion online. It's really becoming prolific, which is awesome. What have you gotten from online support?
I found ADHD TikTok and I felt so validated. It was wild.
Sarah isn't alone in finding community on TikTok. Videos with the hashtag ADHD have been viewed over 9.6 billion times, and videos tagged adult ADHD have over 172 million views.
We need to talk about the relationship between sex and ADHD, so if you don't want to see this kind of content, grab a fruit snack on the way out.
Creator Kate Osborne is one of the platform's biggest ADHD creators. Their account, Katiosaurus, has over 1.5 million followers, and their videos have more than 41 million likes.
I mean, I started talking about ADHD, frankly, as a joke. There was a trend going around on TikTok that was like, things in my fill in your personal blank house that just makes sense. But everybody who was making these videos had these like perfect, immaculate, like magazine houses. And so I never have, that has never been my reality. And so I made this video that was like, things in my ADHD house that just make sense.
This pile of boxes that's been sitting on the ground for a week. Some poster board conveniently stored in the dining room next to a bag of scraps, just in case I want to do a project. 17 cans of pasta sauce because I always forget if I've bought it or not.
Frankly, I got mad. That's why I started making content, because I just was like, where am I? I'm not a 7-year-old boy. I have 2 master's degrees. Like, there has to be somebody out there like me.
37-year-old Renee Brooks also started openly discussing her ADHD online. Her blog, Black Girl Lost Keys, was started 12 years ago. And today, a Facebook support group Renee created provides a safe space for over 3,000 people of color to talk about their ADHD experiences.
It's really humbling, and I feel like I've been able to free up a lot of people who were feeling like they were on the outskirts. They can come into a place where they can be their full self all at once without having to feel like they have to check an identity at the door.
A lot of the things that help me are out of reach for other people. Some of the medications are extremely expensive. Being able to afford therapy or find a therapist to also help getting good quality mental health is actually kind of difficult.
It's a great thing to point out, because if anybody knows somebody that is potentially struggling with something and they don't have the means, they can step in and offer that help. Maybe, hey, take their laundry and do their laundry for them. There's still ways to help people.
And that's helpful, just to sometimes like to reset. Life happens, right? And like things can build up again, and you have to maybe like restart getting into the habit.
You're such an inspiration, especially for somebody who's diagnosed at 33, is a professional, kicks ass, and has found ways to make it work. And so you're going to help a lot of people. So I just want to say thank you.
I don't know who I would be if I didn't have it. I just need to embrace the good and do my best to manage the parts that make my life challenging.